Welcome to the Postville Yeshiva Alumni Podcast, where alumni share memories, experiences, and life lessons with the current Talmidim. We hope you enjoy.
What's up?
Okay.
Oh my
God. They think you're crazy. Come on, no?
Who
Okay.
thinks I'm crazy?
They're gonna think you're crazy.
What, you have a bunch of antis this year?
We have some, whatever, but even the Meshachis don't start that way. Say who you are, where you live, where you came from, how you came to Postville, where you went from here, and whatever else you'd like to share.
All right, let's jump into it. My name is Shmuel Springer, or Springer, depending on how far away from Yeshiva I am. My kryptonite is that I'm itches on anal, but it's gotten me a long way. I'm from Crown Heights. I went to Postville for Shir Beis and Shir Gimel.
What years?
I have no idea. I don't know what yesterday was. I don't know. I'm 29. 2013, 14, something like that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense, yeah.
I was listening to one of the podcasts with what's his name from Detroit.
Mendy Shepherd.
Yeah, so he was my shliach my first year.
So we'll go back and listen to that one, see what year was here, then we'll figure it out. Okay.
I think 2013 and 14, or maybe, I think 13 and 14. Either way. Those were the years I was in Postville. I had an incredible time, very fond memories, very wild time. I don't know what Postville is like today, but I feel like that was the end of an era of insanity. And I'm very grateful to be a part of it, to have been a part of it. I'm not sure what brought me to Postville. I know that I knew of it from my cousins in Des Moines.
By the way, yes. Say hello, Gabriel. Say hello. Gabriel Jacobson. Gabriel Jacobson.
Hello. I was trying to see if I could spot familiar faces, but the camera's not very clear. So I knew about Postville from the Jacobsons. Another alumni, Mendel Rosner, is a good friend of mine, and he lived in Postville, so I knew Postville from there. And Yeshiva in Crown Heights wasn't really working out, so I was looking for a place where I could have some freedom and grow. And somehow Postville became the place, so I ended up there, and I had a lot of fun, a lot of growth. Were there more questions that I didn't answer?
Let's continue. We'll get back to it in a bit. Where'd you go from Postville?
So from Postville, there was a month in my life that I remember occasionally, but I try very hard not to. Cincinnati, Mississippi tried making a zal, and I was there the first year during El, and it was horrible. No hate to Cincinnati. They're great people out there. It just did not work. I think I was one of 5 students, and I was there for 1 month. And then after that, I ended up going to Argentina for 2 years. Also had an incredible time over there. Ate a lot of steak, got very fat. And it's actually funny because both Postville and Argentina are both associated with beef and shechting. I just realized that. And then I did get accepted to Alei Torah, but I did not go. And then I guess I've been in the workforce since then.
Where'd you go after Argentina? Where'd you go? Where'd you start working at?
So I was in Crown Heights in New York. I attempted to sell life insurance. Believe it or not, I did get my license to do that. I somehow passed the test. But that didn't. I think in life insurance, you need to have a pretty decent network. And I was 20 years old, so I didn't know anybody that needed life insurance. It didn't really work. I did that for 6 months, and then I ended up moving out to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where I started a couple of businesses with a friend/cousin of mine. I was there for I want to say 3 or 4 years. And then I moved to California, did some interesting businesses over there, which we could get into if you want. And then I had an awakening in California, and that set me on a path back to Judaism.
When did you leave Yiddishkeit?
I left Yiddishkeit in Pennsylvania. I don't know exactly what age, but there was this moment in my life where I realized that the things that I was doing didn't really make any sense, and they weren't helping um, they weren't helping my life. They were hindering my life. So at a certain point, I realized that like yeshiva was more of a incubator, and it was a space and an environment for me to behave in certain ways. And when I went into the real world and I started working and I started dealing with real life problems, it seemed like I was out of that incubator and like things started falling apart. So out of the stress of life, I just decided to like drop everything because I was too overwhelmed. And that lasted, I want to say, like 3 or 4 years. And then at a certain point, life got so difficult that the kind of opposite happened. And I had this reawakening where I realized that the incubator was really just it was a training ground to learn how to apply those things into the real world. Because without it, you can't really live a functioning life, if that makes sense.
You're using fancy words. What's an incubator?
Okay, so these kids are gonna open up English books and read and learn. An incubator is is a perfect environment for something to grow. So, for example, today a lot of chickens aren't actually hatched by the hen sitting on them. There's something called an incubator, which creates an environment exactly the temperature and moisture and all the right conditions that a hen would sit on the egg and hatch it. So it mimics that environment. So I'm using that word to describe the concept of yeshiva, which yeshiva and college and these different places, they're not actually like real life, but it's an incubator in that you're in this perfect container where you can learn the skills and information and things that you need to learn, so that when you do go out of the incubator and you're not by your mother's nest, you can apply those things and function in a scary yet fun world.
So let's continue. So you had an awakening. You want to talk about that more soon. And then after that, what your work life and your religious life will continue at the same pace?
No. So when I started, like, I guess coming back to Yiddishkeit, if you will, I put a pause on work in terms of like parnasa, and I started working on myself. Because I've always believed that, if you want to make money in life, or if you want to be successful, it's not about working on a product or service, it's about working on yourself. And if you work on yourself, then as a byproduct, you can have a good service or a good product, and then you are the keli to fill the vessel in. So I definitely took a pause on the workforce for about like 2 or 3 years, and that was more like 2 years. And that was a very interesting time in my life, to where like I was working full time on myself to figure out, what wasn't working, what was working, so that I could be a functioning human being, because there was a point where I wasn't. So that I was in Crown Heights for most of that time. And then eventually I moved out to Florida, which was a very interesting Hashkafa Prata story. And then I ended up moving in and out of Florida 3 times in 1 year. I don't know why Hashem was doing that, but it was an interesting
From
journey.
Florida back to New York and back to Florida again.
Yeah, meaning I moved to Florida for an opportunity, and then when that didn't work, I moved back to Crown Heights, and then like a week later, a different opportunity came about, and that happened 3 times in 1 year, and then eventually I started dating, and I found my wife, and we settled here in Florida. Been married for a bit over a year, and that's where we're here right now.
What's your current parnasa / lichos or whatever you do now?
Give me 1 second. These lights are sensory. They go on and off. Okay, whatever. If it goes off, I'll move around. Shlichus, I breathe shlichus. No, I'm kidding. I mean, like, if you're a yid with a yarmulke. By the way, I have to say, I don't know what it is about my energy, but I get bageled by every single Jew that I come across. Today I got bageled by a few goyim, and that was a level that was not accepted.
What does bageled mean?
Bageled means when you're walking around minding your own business, but you look like a Jew and you get called out for being a Jew, not in a bad way. It's kind of like, a guy that walks up to you and says shalom, like that type of thing. So in Florida, I get bageled a lot by Jews. Today, I got bageled by like 3 goyim. It was a lot. Shlichus, I'm not technically on any specific agenda or shlichus, but I make a point, like I, started off this podcast with Yechi, I make a point to be in a very good and healthy way obnoxious about my Judaism, obviously without making a chil Hashem or a chil Lubavitch. And then in terms of Parnasa, I'm involved in a bunch of food, product, service businesses, which all started in Postville.
What does that mean?
My first commercial job in the food industry was Postville. I was the only student my year that cooked a full meal the entire year.
Which other bochurim did, and they stopped the middle. They started.
Yeah. Meaning my year, there were 3 bochurim. Each bochur cooked a meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then breakfast and dinner went through a bunch of people, and lunch was the only consistent meal that was never had leftovers and was cooked from start to finish by me, by yours truly.
I know.
It's actually funny. I was thinking about this the other day, and I figured I'd share it because it's just so silly and stupid. I remember when Rabbi Ben Shimon told me that I'm going to be. It probably happened a couple of weeks into yeshiva. I remember. I guess he saw that I was bored some classes, or that I was hanging around the kitchen or whatever. At some point, he told me that I was going to cook lunch, and I remember the day he told me I was going to cook lunch. I was so excited. I went into the kitchen and I chopped up about 15 onions and sauteed them, and I didn't end up using them. I had no need or use for them. I was just so excited that I was going to be cooking.
Okay. Sounds familiar over here. So what do you do?
I also remember Rabbi Levin coming into the kitchen and asking the person if they washed negavasar, and if not, he would take all the food and throw it into the garbage.
Never happened.
I watched it happen. I watched it happen once.
Okay. You learned your lesson from then on.
I always wash my hands, not for me, for the bochurim, and for you.
So what do you do currently in the food industry?
So right now I have a brand, and I'm working on putting products in the shelf around their flesh products. I have a beef tallow product I'm putting in the stores locally. I'm working on an exporting business to Central America, and I'm working on meat manufacturing.
Where do you get your meat from?
Where do I buy my meat from?
Yeah.
So I have a local distributor here, but I generally get from Solomon's, Noah's Ark.
So you buy the meat and then you cut it up yourself and do things with it? And then...
I have different stuff I do. Yeah, in the beginning of the year, I was doing smoked meats, like Texas style, like brisket and burnt ends and stuff like that. But I wanna manufacture that on a commercial level, not just like a local place. So we're working on a bunch of different things.
We might see you back in Postville one day.
For what?
To deal with them to get meat from over here.
I don't deal with them a lot.
We might. We'll see you. Who knows?
Maybe one day.
I
was. Go ahead.
What?
No, I was gonna say I was in Postville a few years ago. I worked in Agri during Tishrei.
I think I remember that. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, before you said you spent 2 years working on yourself. What does it mean that a person spends 2 years working on themselves?
Well, I've been spending my whole life working on myself. Those 2 years, I would say, were very concentrated and mainly focused on that. What would I say is for one to work on themselves? So I think, we know this from Chassidus that there's two modes of operation going on in the human psyche, right? We have the mind and we have the heart, the mayach and the lev. And they're very opposite extremes. The mind is very like logical and methodical and detail oriented, and the heart is very emotional and feeling. It's very associated with feelings and in the moment and whatnot. And feelings and emotions are really they're trying to think of the right word. They're kind of like kind of how like a screen works with a computer, right? Today we know that computers are all one piece, but back in the 80s when they were developing these things, you had a computer which was the machine that operated, and then you had a screen that you can actually see what you were operating. But before we had screens attached to computers, you didn't really know what you were doing. You hoped and prayed that it was working out. So I guess an interface is what I'm looking for. So emotions are kind of the interface to the world, meaning things happen in life, in the world, and our emotions are how we react based on what happened. So if you hear good news, you'll feel excited. If you hear bad news, you'll feel sad, like that. And for me, there was a point in my life where I realized that the way I responded to life was very unhealthy, meaning it was very impulsive, it was very reactive, and I was using certain substances and certain behaviors to cope and deal with life that was too overwhelming. So when I say working on myself was really going inward and introspecting and sitting with my thoughts and sitting with my feelings and analyzing them and breaking them down and discovering what was causing me to tick and become active instead of reactive, and learning how to approach life from more of a calm and collective state instead of a reactive and frustrating state. And working on oneself is a life mission, and you got to do it over time. Like when I'm done learning is when I'm 6 feet under. There's always the net, because it's kind of like going up a ladder. It's like every time you go one level, there's always another level, another step to take. So it's like, for example, let's say when I was single, I was working on myself to really become the best version of myself. And then you can practice all you want, but until you're in a relationship, those things that come at you don't really happen until they come at you. So then I got married, and then all these things that I hadn't anticipated all of a sudden showed me, oh, okay, so you did all this work, but that was baby steps compared to the level that you're at right now. And I don't have children yet, but I'm sure when I have children who are an extension of me and a mirror of me, they're going to test the living heck out of me, and I'm going to get to the next level. So there's always levels of growth that one can attain. So that's what I mean by working on oneself. I kind of put myself back into the incubator and said, I'm not going to be distracted by external mundane things. I'm not going to work. I'm going to, go to shul. I'm going to daven. I'm going to learn. I'm going to give myself the space that I need to like recenter myself and then go back out into the world from there.
And you did this with your own logic, how to deal with, how to react to things. It was through chassidus, through talking to people, psychology, therapy.
I would say it's a combination of the Hasidus that I learned and the psychology that I've studied. But yes, realistically, it was all, I figured it all out on my own. I mean, obviously, it's not like a bragging point. Like Hashem gifted me with the mind to understand things. But yeah, for the most part, I never really had a mentor or somebody guiding me through this process. It was kind of a trailblazing experience that was very difficult yet beneficial at the same time.
And you never fell back on things that you heard in the past from different teachers, mashpim, from Rangans.
No, of course I'm not here to say that I did this on my own and yeshiva didn't help me or chassidus didn't help me. It was all embedded within me. I think there was, for most of my life, the knowledge was there, but it wasn't being utilized. And when I decided to take on this journey, I think a lot of those things surfaced. But I can't necessarily point to a specific sicha or mimer or reference something. It's kind of just like built into the psychology. Like, for example, like when I learn a sicha the Rebbe, half the time I know the question that's coming, not because I'm a genius or because I'm this gehabene person. It's because the Rebbe has a style and logic of learning, and if you learn enough of it, you understand. You can anticipate what's coming.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that for sure. So going back to the time in Postal, which is the main point of this podcast officially.
What do you do?
We'll Pennsylvania get to Zoom. We'll go back to Postal for a little bit. So some memories of while you were here in Postal, some exciting things that happened, some teachings, some farbrengens, some of the crazy stuff.
Is everything on the table?
Everything, as long as it's you should use the edel averta, that's all. But you can say whatever it is.
Yeah, foul mouth is something I'm still working on. I don't know what's up with that, but I think so far I did all right. Like funny, crazy memories.
Good memories, farbrengens, things that you I don't know, anything while you were in yeshiva. Positive memories, but anecdotes.
Most of them were insane. I'm happy to like share them, but like you mentioned.
That's what we
You
asked
mentioned
for.
a memory of a farbrengen. I remember we were in the foyer once and I was trying to light a cigarette, and after 10 minutes I realized I was lighting it backwards. I mean, those are some crazy memories. Farbrengens, I do recall farbrengens always being fun. Something about Postville, the nigunim were always like, whether I was listening to what the mashpia was saying was a different story, but the nigunim in between were always very like lebedik and lively, which were they definitely got me going. Those were always fun. But do I have specific memories about farbrengens? Not per se. I remember Rabbi Gurkov came to a farbrengen that I made for my grandfather Shloshim, and he never came to farbrengen, so that was a little special. I remember watching movies in Rabbi Gurkov's basement when Mendel Shmukla lived there. Shout out.
He still lives there. He still lives there, by the way.
No, but I'm saying when he lived in the basement. Oh, I have a very fond memory. You took us to a farm once, and they took us to the calves, and we were able to put our hands in their mouth. And that was a very interesting sensory experience. I think the coolest thing I did in Postville, which nobody should do at home, was we borrowed the Shluchim's van without asking. And I think it was like 4 a.m. and we went to Walmart with a bunch of friends, and we got away with it. But then there was this incredible bochur by the name of Ashi the next day who basically made an announcement in Zal saying that we borrowed the van without permission, and then we got into trouble.
He took a video also on you, whatever.
Probably a very special boy.
Great guy.
Ashley Khan?
No, someone else.
Oh, Ashi Khan farbrained with in Postville. He just got married. Not in Postville, in Florida.
What's a message you would tell yourself if you would be able to talk back to yourself now when you were 15 years old? What would you tell yourself?
It's a very good question. What would I tell my 15-year-old self? I think I would tell myself, because I tell this to myself all the time now, but it took me a long time to learn that. Because at 15, I definitely, even though I had a bit of it, I didn't live that way. I would tell myself, nobody really cares about like what you do or think, and you should really like do what you want to do. Like a lot of, like, I remember when I was 15, I would be in my head about like, what does this guy think? What does that guy think? Is this okay to do? Is that okay to do? But the truth is that everybody's so deep and stuck in their own Yiddishkeit that you can just like do the wackiest thing and nobody would even notice. Or even if they noticed, like 2 minutes later, they would be, moving on to their coffee or whatever. So I would tell myself and you guys, if you are inspired to do something crazy, do it. I mean, don't get kicked out of yeshiva, but like, I'm saying inspire yourself.
Right now you're frum, and I assume that you believe in frumkeit being the right path of life. That's why you're doing it.
Frum is a strong word, but for the most part, yeah.
Do you regret your 3-4 years that you were not religious? Or you think that's
absolutely not?
You don't regret that.
Absolutely not. I would honestly, I would say this with caution, but I would tell anybody that's doing Yiddishkeit or frumkeit to check off the boxes, I would definitely tell them to explore taking a step further out of it, because at the end of the day, we know that there's an aspect of doing what Shulchan Aruch says, and then that there's, intention that's associated with it, right? The kavanah that you have. And they're both extremely important. They're not mutually exclusive, but real Avedis Hashem comes from Avedis Shebelev. It's like you really want to feel, and it's interesting because I think even though I believe that Chabad is the most aligned Chassidus, there is a certain element that you see, like let's say in the Breslev, where they're more from Chagas and not Chabad, that we're missing a little. Meaning, we do things in a very logical way, and there's an aspect of like the Varmkeit that can be missing at times. And I think it's very important. And there's this beautiful saying that I know from a friend, which I'll share. And he says like this. He says, the word spiritual is SPI, ritual. If you just do things, they're going to be a ritual, right? And then SPI stands for specific, purposeful intention. If you just do a ritual, you're going to do a ritual. It's not going to help you grow or become a better person. It's just going to be continuous, mundane. If you just have intention without the ritual, then also you're just in your head, you have concepts, you have ideas. But if you take SPI, the specific, purposeful intention, and you apply it to a ritual, then it becomes spiritual. And I think that's very aligned with Yiddishkeit and Chassidus, is because you have, let's say, putting on tefillin. Yes, there's an obligation to put on tefillin every single day. And if you just check the box and you put the tefillin on, you're Yetzeh. But then there's also the kavanah that comes with the tefillin and why we're putting it on, and the ideas that, you're taking control of your animal self and you're elevating it, and all those aspects that come to the deeper levels and meanings of what tefillin is. If you apply that to the ritual of putting on tefillin, then it becomes a very spiritual experience. And for me, I'm not telling anybody to go fry out. I can speak from my own experience. My experience was that Yiddishkeit for me was very checking off the box. My heart was very closed, and there was very little like Varmkeit, and there was very little like emotion and purpose associated with what I was doing. And going away from all of that gave me the ability to ask myself what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and to go full, come back full circle with a much more rounded and emotionally infused experience of what Yiddishkeit is.
And you don't think that someone is from can get to it just through Chassidus without going off and coming back on again?
I think each to their own. I think some people can, but generally, in my humble experience, I haven't seen it. Meaning you have the guy that's a very serious bacher, and yes, he can stay on track and associate himself with the right people and the right mashpiyim and grow and learn and become that person. I'm talking about the person who's kind of doing it but is halfway out the door. Meaning he's not a serious bacher that says, okay, this is my way of life. I want to become the best version of this person. I'm talking about somebody in yeshiva who's like kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And it's like, yeah, he could put in time and effort, but he's not really serious about it. I feel like sometimes those people need to be pushed off the ledge to really, and it's not necessarily just for Yiddishkeit. I think it's an application to life in general. A lot of people, they're quote unquote halving life, like they're going by just cruising, and sometimes they need a slap in the face for them to wake up and realize that, like, yes, you want to have fun, but life is a little more serious than just like cruising by.
Mm-hmm. A bacher asked though before, what was your businesses in Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre?
In Pennsylvania, I had a party rental business and a 3PL, third-party logistics. Oh, lights.
Okay. Huh?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm in a like here.
This is your house? Where are you?
I'm in a conference room in my building, and the lights are censored.
I want to ask you, what was the California experiences? If you want to share that information a little bit.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. So before leaving Pennsylvania, I was there for like 3 or 4 years. And at a certain point, my partner basically said that he's not interested in being in business with me. So he politely took the business from me, which is a whole nother conversation in and of itself. And at that time, I was having a very hard time functioning. And I started using cannabis as a way I mean, now I look at it as an escape, but then I was considering it medicine as a way to stay as a functioning human being. And when I decided to move on from Pennsylvania, I was so grateful for this medicine plant that God gifted us that I wanted to give back to it. And I decided I'm going to move to California and learn how to grow this plant so I could continue on my journey of healing and healing the rest of the world. So I moved out to California. I asked a friend if he knew anybody in California that grows cannabis, and he said yes. So I flew out and met the guy, and he thought I drove 45 minutes to meet him, and I was like, nah, I just flew from Pennsylvania. And he's like, oh, you're that crazy? Okay, let me put you in touch with somebody. So he put me in touch with some Israelis who were they were growing unter dem Bank or unter dem Tisch, whichever way you want to look at it. And so I learned how to grow cannabis there. That was a very interesting, fun experience. And I did that for like a year or two. And then eventually, as I said before, I had this awakening and I ended up moving back to New York.
But why didn't you stick with that business? Isn't it like a lucrative business?
It had the potential to be very lucrative, but I learned how to grow for about a year. I was growing for other people. And then about a year in, I decided to pull some money together from like friends and family and start my own grow up, which initially started successfully. But then the market, like at that point, everybody started growing out there. So the market got really saturated. And it got to a point that the projections like didn't end up adding up, and like what I was growing, I was barely able to sell at cost. So with my life kind of turning upside down, I decided to pull the plug and cut my losses at that time instead of going further down the hole.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any questions?
Let's go.
What was the question?
What's the craziest thing craziest thing?
Craziest thing that happened in Postville? You said before, no?
The craziest thing that happened in Postville. I'm sure you guys know of the legend Shlosh.
They don't know about her.
Sure, yeah.
They don't know about her here.
Apparently, some people know.
No.
Either way, she left the year I was there, and the reason she left was because there was a bacher who brought back wine from Dam Svardea by the Seder and poured it on her doorstep, and her house burnt down. I think that was the craziest thing that happened in Postville when I was there.
Get back.
I think she lives in town still. Who still lives there? Huh? No.
Bushy.
Yeah. Yeah, she still lives in town, I think.
She still lives in Postville?
I think so.
She's about.
I don't know. I haven't heard from her in a long time, but I think she lives in.
Oh, it's good.
She's away? Okay, I don't know where she is now.
We also we built a float. We built a float for Lag Ba'omer in Agri, and we all had a lot of fun taking turns driving the forklifts around. And then we got into trouble for that. And the float that we built ended up staying in Postville for a very long time. It was a 770 by the four.
Yeah. There for a few years, yeah. You got shared already.
Why are you self-entertained with?
Why did you keep yourself entertained with Beinas Darden?
What did I keep myself busy in Postville?
Beinas Darden, yeah, not on Seder. What was he doing?
No, during Seder also. It wasn't Seder.
You're saying like on vacation?
No, in the breaks. The problem that they don't have their phones, so they want to know how can you be busy and occupied.
By the way, I didn't have my phone either. There was a point in yeshiva where I got a second phone, and then I realized after like 3 or 4 weeks of using it that it was stupid and a waste of time, and I gave it to Ellie. Like, there's no point. If you're in yeshiva, there's no point. By the way, when I was in California, there was a point where I got so fed up with my phone. I was getting phantom vibrations on my leg, meaning my phone wasn't in my pocket, but my brain was telling me that I was getting vibrations. And at that point, I got so fed up. I was like, I'm done with a smartphone. And I asked myself, I think there was like 3 questions, like, can I live without one? Can I run my business without one? And maybe like one more thing. Oh, and can I navigate like without one? And my car at the time had built-in navigations, and I basically got a flip phone for like a year and a half. And I stopped using a flip phone when I moved to Israel for a few months, and I needed WhatsApp. But you guys stay off the phones as much as possible. They're very great tools, but if you enslave yourself, it could be very rough. So, but to answer your question, we would beat each other up a lot. Yeah, we would do a lot of I learned how to fight in Postville. We would wrestle with each other. We would play sports. We would just hakachainik and talk shtusim. Yeah, there wasn't a ton to do per se, but I think the camaraderie amongst, the bochurim, just I think young boys are creative and wild enough to just have a good time if there's enough good guys around. Like you don't need to have something structured or planned or prepared. You can just like figure out how to have a good time. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was also a lot of just like hanging around. I remember before the basement dorm was built, there was a point where I bought a BB gun, and we would have these games where we would drive on bikes. We would be both on bikes, and one person would have a gun and the other person would be being chased. That was a fun game.
You actually shot each other?
Yeah.
With BBs or with the other ones, with the plastic ones?
No. Metal BBs with CO2. It was not safe. Don't recommend it. Also, I remember one time I asked a friend if he can shoot me in the back because I wanted to know what it would feel like. So I told him to go back 30 feet or whatever, and he like aims it. And I asked him, I was like, "You shot a BB gun before, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then like I take my shirt off, he shoots me in the back. It like kind of like ripped my skin, and I was like, "Okay, it didn't feel that bad." And then he's like, "I've never shot any type of gun before," so.
Baruch Hashem,
I don't know. We would just do stupid things and figure out how to have fun with it.
Yeah. Some things don't change.
Can I ask the bochurim a question? What type of things are they doing right now in between Storm?
They can't say now, I'm here. And I'm gone. Like, they'll be on the screen. They'll be able to say what they did then.
You can say it, Rabbi Levin will be impressed.
No, it's nothing to do. Please serve them.
Okay, Shmuley, thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
I hope I was helpful. Stay blessed.